Lesson 7. As summer vacation draws near, elementary schools around the country are handing out their reading lists for summer homework. Although I can vaguely remember the books on my summer reading list when I was 10, what I recall the most when I imagine reading that summer is an easy feeling. I can see myself sitting under a shady tree, surrounded by mountains, turning the pages of a library book. I might never have actually sat under such a tree then, as we lived in the city, so it is likely I am remembering a landscape created by the books themselves. In any case, it is a shady place I recall, one that let my mind rest and wander. Resting and wandering are no longer key experiences in many of the young adult novels on today's reading lists. Although they are often the good books, that is, the ones that won the highest literary prizes, they tend not to be about children having adventures or fighting enemies in magical places. Instead, they tell about children who must face and cope with harsh realities. Where characters in my books played in the woods, the children in these books are trying to deal with divorce. The suffering of the children in these books is generally caused by adults. A parent has died or run away or acted irresponsibly. The children are left trying to put together the pieces of their broken families. There is no magic to help them out, no fantasy to ease the pain. As a group, these books are well written. They have some complex characters and plots, and are rich in cultural descriptions. But the pain and suffering of the children is what stays with you. One 10-year-old I know told me, "Those books give me a headache in my stomach." I can understand why. Here, for example, are two of the novels assigned this summer to American 10-year-olds, both winners of the highest literary prizes. Walk Two Moons by Sharon Creech describes a daughter's search for her missing mother, who fled, it turns out, because of a deep depression. At the end, the girl discovers that her mother was killed in a bus accident. A far gentler book, Because of Winn-Dixie, by Kate DiCamillo, is about a girl who finds a friendly dog who in turn helps her rebuild her life. But she must do that because her mother has left her. We are told also that the mother loved to drink. These kinds of books, often referred to as realistic or problem novels, emerged as a genre in the 1960s, and have been widely read ever since. In the last few decades, writes a children's literature historian, Anne McLeod, the path of young American adolescent novels has been from outward to inward, from concern with the young adult's relation to the larger community, to an emphasis on the adolescent's inner feelings. Sheila Egoff, also an expert in the field, writes that such books take the approach that maturity can be gained only through a severe testing of soul and self, with some kind of shocking entry into the adult world. The reason usually given for exposing 10-year-olds to such upsetting books is that children who read about situations different from their own gain a greater understanding of human behavior and cultural diversity. Some educators believe that life is harder than it used to be. Books shouldn't protect children from this. The argument is that anxiety is useful to children. The kind of realistic fiction that seems more useful, I believe, offers its young heroes and heroines a certain measure of emotional protection. These novels manage to present child characters in difficult situations, but are also careful to consider how a real child might respond to the story's content. Two books that my children loved when they were 10 are about the Holocaust and racial discrimination in the American South. While the circumstances of these stories are indeed troubling, they are not experienced as traumatic. The child characters are protected by adults throughout. However, what remains most loved and most useful in helping children face the troubles of life is the presence of a less real world. A universe where scary things are softened by a blanket of fantasy is easier to enter. It's helpful, too, for the main characters to have access to a tiny bit of magical power. One need only remember that Harry Potter, after all, has had to deal with abusive relatives and the murder of his parents. His magic accompanies him. He is looked after no matter what trouble he encounters. But should helping children face troubles be the main goal of children's literature? Aren't we asking children to experience the world on adult terms? We seem to have lost sight of what children can actually handle. Instead of our children being free to wander and dream and invent at their own pace, and to read about children doing such things, we assign them the task of reading about weary children who are spending their childhoods trying to cope with the mess that their parents left behind.